Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, you are having a great week. We are coming up. It is now July, and of course, what that means when it comes to the baseball season is basically it's one of the few times where it feels like Christmas wherever you are, because the trade deadline is literally a month away, and we have with us. Cannot thank him enough for being with us. One of the best when it comes to baseball inside news and covering all things baseball. Robert Murray of Fansided and Foul Territory. He was with us in the offseason. Gracious enough to join us again. Robert, pleasure to have you again, sir.
No, it's good to be here with you. I got to apologize to everybody. Last time I was on the show, I got your hopes up for a pitcher. Did not end up happening. Shawn gave me flack for it before the show. I got to wear it because I never want to mislead you guys. So, again, I'm wearing it. But good to be here again with you boys.
Absolutely nothing on you. That's the purpose of the reason that did not occur just gives us more content to talk about now. And that's what we're going to dive into as we mix it up, engineered by Fastenal. So, of course, the quote-unquote flack was all in good fun because, Robert, you're one of the most trusted sources when it comes to keeping us as the general public, Braves country in general, up to date on what's going on. And so that's what we're going to get into. But first, let's kind of get your assessment, of where the Braves are. The Braves, of course, had a wonderful start to the season. April and May came into June. They've kind of fallen flat, over the past month. But what is clearly there is that their goal to contend for a World Series has not changed. And the need for them to be active with not only maybe one major move, but multiple major moves at the trade deadline, it's become even more of a necessity. What are your general assessments of the Braves as we're a month out from the trade deadline, as we kind of look and see what they potentially could do to improve this club?
Yeah, this is a team that is tremendously talented overall. Obviously, you have some high-end stars who are also sidelined at the same time, too. But they've also had some really nice value additions in the offseason. Mauricio Dubon exceeded expectations. Dom Smith has been a really nice add there. But they started super strong, and it's come back down to earth. They went on a big skid to end this past month. And it's got a lot of people wondering exactly what is this outlook like for this team going forward. And I'm still optimistic about it. Like, you have Ronald Acuna Jr. probably coming back right after the All-Star game. You have Drake Baldwin, who is probably, you got to imagine he's going to get better as he's working through some kinks here. And you also, the big question that I have here is, what exactly do you have in Austin Riley at this point? Because his struggles are well documented. They signed him to that big $200+ million contract. Can he get back to that prime form that he was in, or what? But overall, I'm still optimistic about this team. I think Anthopoulos is going to be very aggressive at the deadline here, and it is going to be, I think Atlanta's for sure one of the top teams to watch here, because you look across baseball, obviously the Dodgers are the Dodgers, the Phillies are surging, the Brewers are still being the Brewers somehow. In the American League, you don't have any team that's necessarily running away with it. This championship is there for the taking, and I think these GMs have to be super aggressive, and I expect Anthopoulos to be one.
So it kind of, in honor of our segment here, mixing it up, you're kind of getting the sense of what Well, at the very least, it just seems out of necessity. Anthopoulos is going to mix it up this year. He's kind of been, held back a bit on making those major moves in season like he did when he was in Toronto. But it certainly seems like many factors this year point to him going out making maybe not one, but even two highly significant moves.
Yeah, and I don't know if it'll end up being a Tarik Skubal type, because if he makes a big move, I would expect it to end up being somebody who's controllable. And if you can get somebody who's controllable, I think that would be something that makes a whole lot of sense for Atlanta. But I do expect Anthopoulos to be going through a bunch of different aisles here, whether it's the pitching side, whether it's the offense. I expect him to be very versatile with what he's trying to do here. And if he ends, the thing though here with Anthopoulos is he's not going to just make a move just to make a move. It has to make sense. And in previous years, it's been getting a Jock Peterson type. It's been getting some different guys at the deadline who aren't necessarily the most flashy names, and it's really worked for him. So I trust Anthopoulos here. I think this offseason reignited some of that fan base's trust in him, because in previous years with them missing the postseason, that obviously frustrated a lot of people. But I think he's the right guy to get this thing done, and I'd expect him to make at least some bigger additions, but I don't know if it's going to necessarily be that big splash by any means.
So let's talk about Skubal for a second, Robert, because that's the name, obviously, every Braves fan, not just Braves fans all over baseball. The first question I want to ask you is this, because will the Braves trade for Tarik Skubal really doesn't matter unless the Detroit Tigers decide to move him. They're right on the edge. I think they're like 6 games back of the wild card. Do you think Detroit is going to sell? First of all, I guess the most important question. And if so, just what you've heard, what you know, what are the odds do you think the Braves would be one of the teams that, could potentially make that deal?
I think that the Tigers really want to compete, which is
Yeah.
why a Skubal trade is not imminent. They're going to try to hold this thing out as long as they can before they have to make that determination. And I think in the ideal world for them, they'd be in a position where they compete, where they have at least one more World Series run with Skubal before he becomes a free agent and before he ends up leaving Detroit. Because I would be stunned if he ends up returning there.
Yeah.
But as far as the Braves go, I do think that they'll be one of the teams that checks in, that tries to potentially get something, or that tries to be like actually like firmly involved. But again, like as I said, I expect the Braves to try to, I expect them to be involved, but I also expect them, if they can, add somebody who's controllable. I think that'd be something that would be really smart for them, just so they have some long-term certainty. But also too, like if you have the chance of adding Skubal and the value is right, and yeah, I get he's a free agent at the end of the year, that maximizes their World Series chances, which is why I think the Dodgers, the Braves, the Rays, the Brewers, like all these different teams make sense for Skubal. In the end, do I think the Tigers sell? I think they should. I don't know if this is necessarily a World Series caliber team, which is like we saw the Angels really regret not trading Shohei Ohtani, and they ended up missing out on a guy like Junior Caminero. Like I don't expect the Tigers to get somebody like that return or a prospect of that caliber. But that being said, they should be getting a ton in return, and there's going to be no shortage of teams that need to be after Skubal.
Another positive narrative, Robert, than about the Braves, and I'm not sure as to what your extent is as far as covering the minor leagues and things like that, but the Braves seem to be one of the more notable emerging systems in baseball this year. And they also, of course, have a bit more, quality path to add to that as well in the draft. So it seems like that now more this year than in previous years, the Braves, if they wind up going after Skubal and try to match up with the Brewers or the Dodgers, okay, those systems may have a bit more. But the Braves, I think this year you could more confidently say they can pay the price for anybody that they want to get if they truly want to go after that guy. You can say that more this year than you have years in the past.
No, totally, which is why I don't think anybody should be off limits for the Braves, whether it's a Reed Detmers or it's a Sonny Gray or a Seth Lugo or Michael Wacha or whoever else in the market. They can go out and get anybody who they really want to. But also, like we've seen the Braves, like with that farm system, like it's definitely emerging here. But look at their history with calling up these prospects that have been in the minor leagues for them, been super successful. And then they ended up extending those guys to super like team friendly contracts, at least for the most part. That's another element of this that I think that we got to have in consideration too, is just the potential for, I mean, obviously high end play, but the ability to get them to team friendly contracts. I think that's something that would like I have in the back of my mind always when it comes to the Braves and their farm system here for sure. But like all the pitchers that I mentioned there, I expect the Braves to check in on a bunch of them. I'm sure I missed a couple when I went through that list. And we're going to be hearing the Braves connected to so many different pitchers. And I would be, again, I'm playing a dangerous game with what I'm about to say, but I would be surprised if we came out of the deadline and the Braves did not get at least one pitcher. I'd be more surprised now than I was in the offseason.
We'd be surprised as well. But let's get a bit more into the potential pitchers that could be on the Braves' radar. But before we do that, another word on the excellent folks at Fastenal.
Fastenal, industrial supplies, innovative solutions. Want to learn more? Visit fastenal.com.
People, dehydration sucks. Quince electrolyte stick packs to the rescue. I order them. I use them all of the time.
Listen, as somebody who may or may not have had some adult beverages in their life, the next day, you know what flavor I like? Watermelon. And I don't like watermelon, I'll go raspberry, and it helps me to get my citrus salt in. But if I do, it helps me to get back to normal, feeling good, and ready to go the next day.
Yep, tough workout or dry mouth in the morning, whatever it is, this is going to help you out Quince always has the best deals for you. You can go on their website and see a number of products. We're talking about not only a product that tastes great, but has zero sugar options that are also stevia free. Give your body what it really needs to stay hydrated. Go to quince.com/foul for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/FOUL for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/foul. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
So, Robert, you must have been reading my mind, in that first segment when you mentioned the Sonny Grays, as well as the Michael Wakas, as well as the Seth Lugos, because those pitchers that you mentioned probably are not on the same tier, as a Tarik Skubal, obviously, but they do have two factors that I think make them, more likely targets for the Braves. I know Sonny Gray is, I believe he has either a player option or some type of team option, maybe a mutual option for next year, but each of those pitchers can be controlled next year. Waka and Seth Lugo for sure can be because of their contract. And let's be honest, for many years, many around baseball probably have thought that Sonny Gray was a logical fit with the Braves. So if he came to us, he likely could sign an extension. I think that is more the tier that the Braves look at. Plus, also, you have to look at the Red Sox and the Royals being two of the teams right now that make the most sense to commit to being sellers as soon as possible.
No, totally. And obviously the Braves and the Red Sox have a history of making trades together where they did the Chris Sale deal. There's history there. But also, like, the fact that these guys are controllable, I think makes a ton of sense here. And Sonny Gray's got the mutual option, and those are always declined. So, like, you got to have that in the back of your mind there. But I think if you look at the Royals, they would make a ton of sense as a potential trade partner here because Seth Lugo is still, in my eyes, one of the most underrated pitchers in ball. And last year, I remember there was a bunch of teams that were ready for him. Like, there was a moment where I thought he was going to get traded. Then I was like, okay, he's actually going to get extended. And then it was traded. And then all of a sudden he signed the extension. Like, it was super back and forth, and the market was really big for him. And I think the Braves would make a ton of sense there. He is somebody who would be able to start a playoff game for them. And I think that's something that'd be important for Atlanta, but also so many other teams, is they want a guy who they can depend on in those kind of games. So Lugo, he's obviously signed long-term. He's got a relatively affordable contract. I remember last year he obviously got a lot of money, but I talked to some other people who were like, okay, yeah, still it's a lot, but it's affordable to take on for sure. And Waka is still super underrated. He's not going to pitch deep into most games for you, but he's dependable. He's a veteran. He's controllable. I like it. So I think he would be, both of those guys would be a great fit. The Royals at this point do not want to sell, but I think they have to just wake up and smell the coffee at some point because this is just a team that feels like they should sell and take advantage of what should be a seller's market.
So of course, that would maybe go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So on top of that, on top of the guys that we've talked about, there's a team I want to ask about because this team operates in a weird fashion, at least to me. They did this big fire sale at the deadline last year and then kind of stopped. And that's the Minnesota Twins because they sold off so many pieces and basically went all the way to the end except for like the last two, which have been Joe Ryan, Byron Buxton. Obviously, Pablo Lopez got hurt. So, and I think the Twins are a little closer to the AL is so jumbled. It's really hard to determine who's buyers and sellers. But, I've heard both things. I've heard the Twins ownership really doesn't want to sell everybody. And then I've heard the front office wants to kind of complete the rebuilding and move Ryan and Buxton. Just in your opinion, obviously Ryan would make a lot of sense for the Braves. He's under control for 2 years. It's a reasonable salary. It's kind of an Anthopoulos type move. But do you think the Twins are actually going to kind of finish the job on this rebuild and sell Buxton and Ryan, or is this something the ownership just won't allow?
I have a really hard time seeing Buxton move, and we've even seen their front office come out and say that they're not wanting to move him. So as of this point, unless something changes, I'm not factoring him into my trade deadline equation. But that being said, I've said it for years. I'm pretty sure I've said it even on the last time I was on the show. Like, Buxton is such a great fit for Atlanta. You get him back home. Like, that just makes so much sense for all these sides. But it seems like he's going to be there to stay. But I totally agree with you on Joe Ryan. And I don't think there's a 0% chance he's moved at this deadline. And I think they'd be really wise to listen on him to see exactly what's going to end up being out there because, like, I listed up all these names before, and I missed Sandy Alcantara. I missed Jose Soriano. Like, there's other names. Like, this pitching market is going to be very deep, very extensive. But Joe Ryan is going to be one of the most intriguing guys here. He's affordable. He's performed at a high level. And he's also, too, I look at the Brewers as a similar pathway here because the Brewers, when they had Josh Hader, Devin Williams, Corbin Burns, all for a year and a half left on their contracts, they moved on from them and they got a good amount of value. And that's how they ended up staying in contention.
Freddie
I wonder if
Peralta,
the Twins.
too.
Yeah, Freddie Peralta, a good call. I forgot about Freddie P. And they can, or the Twins can go in a similar fashion here with Joe Ryan, who's got a year and a half left on his contract. You can get a boatload for him. They could have gotten a boatload last year, held on to him. But I think he's going to get plenty of hits. I would not be surprised if he's moved, and I think he feels like a really, really good fit. If the Braves went out and got a big name at the deadline, I think Ryan makes as much sense as about anybody on the market.
Yeah.
A similar team to the Twins, who just recently had a change in leadership, of course, was the Angels. And that's more notable for the Braves than most teams because Perry Manayasen obviously having, his past, relationship with the Braves. Of course, that's who the Braves traded with most frequently. Perry Manayasen out, former Cardinals GM John Mozeliak in, maybe as a temporary GM. Who knows? He could be long-term. But names like Jose Soriano, you mentioned Reed Detmers, Joe Adele, each of those guys, controllable. I feel that they could, make sense as being maybe even a package deal for Alex Anthopoulos. But each of those three could certainly make sense in a lot of ways for the Braves. Perry Manayasen's there. You would think the Braves had a pretty good connection, maybe more than most teams with the Angels. But John Mozeliak now being there may actually make it more likely that the Angels move those guys. What's the potential likelihood that those guys are moved? And your thoughts on those guys making sense for the Braves?
Yeah, my alarm bells always go up with the Angels, especially here now that they don't have Perry there, because in years past they've been super hesitant to move on from those guys, and they've held on to them, and they've lost some of these guys, and it's been unfortunate for them, especially a guy like Shohei, although I think that was more Artie Moreno than anybody.
Yeah.
But this deadline, now that you have John Mozeliak, he's got a history of making bigger moves. He's not afraid of doing anything, and the fact that he ended up not talking to Artie Moreno throughout this process, and he just talked to Molly Jolly there during the interview process. I wonder, could he have autonomy over all this stuff, or is Artie going to meddle? I don't know. My guess is Artie tries to meddle, but I do think it ends up increasing the chances here where a Detmers could be moved or a Joe Adele type could be moved, and I think both of those guys would make a lot of sense here for Atlanta. And you have. I think the Braves could definitely use another bat, which is why I thought Adele made a lot of sense. I also thought a Taylor Ward type made a lot of sense for them, both of those guys, but Detmers too. He is – I've said it – I just said it on Foul Territory a few hours ago, and I'll say it again. Of all the players I've been asked about by other teams, Detmers has been the guy I've been asked about the most. Teams are so intrigued by him. They view him as a frontline guy. They view him as a guy who can be a difference maker in the postseason. He can be a guy that heads your rotation for – year in and year out. He's just a super intriguing candidate. If you tried to package those guys together, I think that'd be super expensive. But getting at least one of them, I think, would be a major win for Anthopoulos or just really any team in baseball, because they're both all those guys, but especially Detmers, they're difference makers.
A couple of other routes that, of course, we talk about controllable pitching that we would love for the Braves to go get, but a couple of other routes that they could do if prices just seem to be a bit too risky for the controllable starters. Casey Mize, Robbie Ray, maybe another one of those lower tier rental arms could make sense. And then, of course, the Anthopoulos special. Going out to get another significant reliever that's controllable. Hello, Aroldis Chapman. Hello, Daniel Lynch. Other names such as that. I could see Anthopoulos kind of pulling his usual out of left field move that you're like, what is he doing? But then you're like, okay, this actually does make sense to strengthen the team. It seems like that if he's going to make multiple significant moves, a lower tier rental or getting another power reliever to clearly make the best back into the bullpen be in Atlanta. Those are two other ways he could go to improve this pitching staff if prices make it to where that makes sense.
Totally. And this reminds me of the winter meetings because they obviously had Raisel Iglesias at that point. And I heard at the winter meetings that Robert Suarez was getting really close to signing. And I was trying to figure out what team it was. And then all of a sudden, the Braves press release drops, you see that they signed Robert Suarez, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me! And it made so much sense, and I could see them doing it again for sure, trying to stockpile that bullpen and adding a third dominant arm. And if it's an Aroldis Chapman type, or if it's somebody else, the bullpen market, like obviously there's gonna be a bunch of teams looking for it, but the uncertainty there of who's all going to be available is something that I'm keeping an eye on here for sure. But I could see Anthopoulos doing that. I could see him trying to bolster that bullpen to have a super bullpen going into the postseason. There's a bunch of different ways he can go about this, and the thing with him is he leaves no stone unturned. He will do something that he's not afraid of doing what he thinks is right. And if he ends up stockpiling that bullpen, maybe adds another bat to that lineup as well. I mean, I wouldn't hate it one bit. But if you can get a Robbie Ray type to shoreline or to shore up your rotation, I think that would make a lot of sense. But if I was Anthopoulos, I would try to add an impact starter first, get an impact bat, and if you can't get that impact starter, then that's when you turn your attention to that bullpen piece. And if you can have that super bullpen, that's freaking awesome. And I would support that no matter what for sure.
So we mentioned the impact starter. That's been the conversation about the Braves for the past couple of years. But this past month spotlights how much an impact bat is a need as well. More on that in just a moment after a word from our partners.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, the MLB season is in full swing, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to call your shot with daily dingers. Joining the action is easy. Just make your free pick on who's hitting a home run in their game, and if you're right, you'll get a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. It's just another reason why FanDuel is the home of home runs. So are you ready to play your game? Head over to FanDuel.com/podcast to get started. That's FanDuel.com/podcast to opt in for daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. Play ball and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. No purchase necessary. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
So one other calling card, Robert, of Alex Anthopoulos is that, while he has not gone after the big name at the trade deadline, he has been someone who's been a master on the margins and been able to recreate an important part of the team at trade deadlines in the past. 2019, it was the bullpen. 2021, it was the outfield. And me and Steven were talking about that last night, the fact that it seems like every year you can get a decent bat pretty cheap because the surplus is typically there. But it feels like this year, with the expanded playoffs, the American League not being as good overall as some had anticipated, there's just not a lot of sellers, so there may not be as big of a surplus, thus prices may be a bit higher. Is that kind of the general, pulse that you're getting as far as the hitter market goes right now?
Totally. That's exactly the feel that I have is there's so much uncertainty as to who's actually going to sell because so many teams are actually feeling that they're in a spot where they can go out and contend. It's got the hitting market just so uncertain at the moment. Like the Braves, they need to add at least one hitter. I mentioned Joe Adell. I mentioned Taylor Ward with them. And with Ha-Seong Kim's struggles, part of me wonders, and I have not heard anything here. I want to clarify that. I don't want to get any Braves fans' hopes up. But I think a guy like CJ Abrams makes a ton of sense for Atlanta. And you can add him to the mix. I think that would be a big difference maker because you look at his ability. He's a great hitter. He's a super talented guy. He's controllable. He would be an awesome fit. And do I think that the Nationals will move him? Probably not. But we could have said the same thing about Mackenzie Gore. And Paul Taboni, who runs the Nationals' front office, he's got a motto where he listens on everybody. It's how he got blown away with an offer by the Texas Rangers for Gore, got Gavin Feen. And as soon as Gavin Feen was included in that, that's when talks really started to accelerate. Abrams was a guy that they listened on in the offseason. The Giants showed pretty significant interest. There were other teams who were in, but the price was just too much for them. And could a team blow the Nationals away with an offer this deadline? I would not rule it out by any means. Again, I still expect that he's going to be in Washington at the end of the year. But that being said, I do think he's a great fit for Atlanta, and I think Anthopoulos should check in.
So C.J. Abrams is a name that, certainly could make sense. Just some other names, Robert, that you think could be connected because, I could put my thoughts out there. You've got some pure, platoon types on teams that are struggling, like a Matt Verlaine of Detroit or Elaine Thomas, Joe Adell is a bit more non-platoon type. But those guys are out there. But, Just some other names that are kind of on different tiers, the all-around hitters on the Adele level, but also some platoon hitters, just some names that you think would be worth tracking their teams over the next month that could make sense for Atlanta once these teams decide to sell.
Yeah, and I think the names that you just mentioned make a lot of sense there. Here's one that I don't know if he's actually going to be available. I would highly doubt it, but we've seen the Brewers move guys, and even this offseason, again, Isaac Collins or Caleb Durbin. We've seen Joey Ortiz really struggle with them. He's kind of had some really good moments here recently. He's a super high level, he's super highly talented guy. But I wonder if he could benefit from a change of scenery. Like, that's one where I wonder if a team could try to buy low there. Here's one that I know has drawn interest in years past, especially this offseason. I could see him now because his defense is so good and his power has increased this year. Is Jacob Young with the Nationals. He is one of the best defensive center fielders in ball. Really talented guy. I think any team that can get him would be a lot better for it. So I think both of those guys would make some sense. But again, the market is just so uncertain at this point where I'm like, I don't want to give you a name, or I don't want to speculate all these names because there's so much uncertainty here. And I would think teams now have the same questions that I do. They have no idea who's going to be available. But give it another 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then we're going to be cooking, and we'll have some more clarity there. But there's just so much uncertainty at this point.
So I'm going to ask you about a name, and I do not expect, because I don't think anybody knows, but this name has been out there for a little bit because he plays for a team that has done salary dumps in the past, and the Braves actually just benefited from one of these, and that's Jeremy Pena, the shortstop for the Astros. Now, the Astros have been playing a lot better lately, so they might not sell at all. But I've just heard that, the Astros don't always operate with the biggest budget. They essentially salary dump Mauricio Dubon to the Braves, which has been tremendous for them. There are a lot of Braves fans. Obviously, shortstop has been a thing for years now. There are a lot of Braves fans dreaming high on Jeremy Pena. This was back more when the Astros were playing pretty bad. Do you think there's any world, because shortstops just so rarely come available, do you think there's any world they would actually move a Jeremy Pena? And obviously, it does seem like it would at least hypothetically make sense for the Braves to at least check in.
No, he makes a ton of sense. If you would have asked me that 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'd have been like, okay, there actually might be a chance here because they look like they were on the outside looking in and just didn't seem like a team that was going to be in a position to compete. And then lo and behold, that division stinks. The entire American League stinks. And now it's even got me questioning whether Christian Walker or Paredes or any of these guys are going to end up being moved. So my guess is that he stays. I would expect a bunch of teams. I think Atlanta should check in there just to see exactly what you can get. Anthopoulos has a relationship with Dana Brown. They've done deals in the past. They know each other. So I think that'd make a ton of sense there. But I thought you might be going in a different direction with that.
Well,
we had the bullpen.
Now I want to know. Now I want to know what direction you thought I was going in.
Yeah, I thought you were going in the Josh Hader direction.
Oh, Josh Hader. Okay.
Yeah, because we talked before about the Braves possibly trying to build that super bullpen, and we saw how the Astros in the offseason were trying to shed salary. He's got a big salary. And I wondered maybe, but I don't know if he's going to end up being moved. But I don't know if he'd necessarily be that big salary guy that the Braves should go out and add. But I expect him to get some hits. But I think the Pena shot by you makes a lot of sense.
I do have one. I just thought about this, actually. I want to get your opinion on this. So one theory that Braves fans have been running with for a couple of months now is obviously the Jurickson Profar money allows them a level of spending at the deadline that a lot of teams don't have. A lot of teams don't have just $15 million just sitting there to spend at the deadline that they weren't expecting to have. And then usually Anthopoulos keeps money to the side for this anyway. So, Braves fans have kind of been dreaming on this idea that they have more money to spend maybe than most teams. The way the Profar money fell in their lap. I'm curious your opinion on that, if you think that would have any impact. Maybe there's a guy, when you said Hader is what made me think of it. Maybe there's a guy that makes big money that otherwise the Braves maybe couldn't afford. Maybe now they could, that they have $15 million they really weren't expecting to have.
No, I think that definitely is a factor here. I think that's a really good shot by you because that's something I had not considered on my end. And I remember as soon as the Skubal stuff ended up coming out, I had a couple different teams tell me it's very rare you have that kind of money just sitting around, just where you can add that to your payroll and not have any effects there. Atlanta can add that. They can add basically anybody that they want to and really have the flexibility to go out and do so. So whether maybe that makes a guy like Skubal more attainable, or maybe it makes one of those big targets more attainable, I'm not necessarily sure. But I think this, based on their ability to compete this season and also the Profar contract and that entire situation, you have to imagine Anthopoulos is going to have as much flexibility as he's had in at any deadline in recent years. So I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think they should go out and check in on everything. And if you're Atlanta, if you're Anthopoulos and you can add one of these impact players and you don't have to deplete your farm system to go out and do so, I say do it, especially if you have that flexibility. Again, great shot by you. That's something I had not really thought about on my end.
Yeah, and especially with Sale being 37, I do wonder, like, how many more bites at the apple do you have with Sale being an ace-level pitcher? It does seem like there's a lot of stars aligning for Alex has more money than normal. They have a very, very, very clear need at starting pitcher. Like, normally the Skubal stuff doesn't seem real to me because it's not really an Anthopoulos move, but you add everything together, it does start to feel maybe a little more real than normal.
No, and I'll tell you, he's going to have a very, very busy deadline. He's going to be in a position where he can consider almost anything and everything. And they're a team to watch. The Phillies are a team to watch. You got the Padres, always a team to watch. The Dodgers. I mean, this is going to be right now. It's super unpredictable because we don't know who the sellers are going to be. But Atlanta's definitely one of the top teams to watch, and I cannot wait to see what he does because odds are we're probably going to find out through the Braves Twitter account, and that's always fun, but also on my end as a newsbreaker, rather frustrating. So thank you, Alex Anthopoulos.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
One other unique factor is we're here with Robert Murray. One last question, Robert. Another unique factor for this trade deadline that you could see impacting every team that you don't usually have, most seasons, is the looming, CBA negotiations. What is 2027 going to look like? Particularly, for some of these rentals, could it mean not the top rentals like a Skubal, but for some of these other rental pitchers like a Mize or a Ray, if a team were to trade for them, could they be more open to extensions? So that may make teams more willing to go after them as rentals. Or some of these controllable, pieces, could their prices be a little bit cheaper because you don't know how much you're going to get from them next year? Could they be open to extensions? How does the uncertainty of 2027 and beyond, because of changes that will come in the years following, how much is that overall impacting what teams may or may not do at this year's trade deadline?
Yeah, I'm still expecting these teams to be aggressive here for sure, but if you can add some of these guys who are controllable, I think that'd be super intriguing to these teams because the uncertainty and just the pure frenzy it's going to be in the offseason when that lockout eventually hits, and when that lockout eventually is over, we're going to be able to play baseball. Players are going to want to be able to be settled. Teams are going to want to know what their rosters are going to look like. And I remember the last time that this ended up happening with the lockout. It was the deadline was obviously crazy, but the offseason is where we really felt it the most, especially beforehand, because these guys wanted to have that certainty. And if you can end up getting, or you want to have that certainty through the lockout, I should say. And if you can get a guy that is maybe on an expiring contract, you have the first ability to sign him, and you have an exclusive window before all these teams are able to negotiate with him. I wonder if that could end up being a factor here as well, that maybe allows teams to be more aggressive in adding these kind of expiring contract guys. I don't know if does that make sense? I think it does. But going back to Skubal here, we've talked about him being expiring. He is not going to be signing before free agency hits. His agent is Scott Boras. There's no way Boras is going to end up allowing him to miss free agency. It's going to be, but the other guys, you wonder if that could end up being something that could be in play here.
Yeah, I remember in 21. So 21 was the last time we had the lockout, and I remember the day before the lockout, it was December 5th. Might have been at the winter meetings. It was another trade deadline. We had 50 different signings happen because everybody wanted some certainty before the lockout because no one knew when the lockout was going to end. So I agree with you. I think there could be another round of that this offseason.
Yeah, I remember that. That was one of the craziest times I've ever had.
Seager, I think Seager signed his big contract in that. There was a whole bunch that day that, signed massive deals just to get it done right before the lockout started.
Yeah, it was wild. And I expected it to happen again. And it was a frenzy, and it's probably going to end up being that same way again because there was a lot of uncertainty at that point. this offseason, there's so much more uncertainty.
Yeah.
This is going to be an ugly up and down offseason. And my best recommendation for everybody who's watching this, don't ride the roller coaster, because it's going to be ugly. The reports are going to be even uglier. But that being said, it's like, I'm confident we're going to have baseball. Are we going to have a full season? I don't know. But I'm confident we're going to have baseball in some way, shape, or form next year.
So, trivia question for both of y'all, and the one who answers this gets a thumbs up. Remind me again, the last two times we've had lockout threatening seasons, 1994, 1995, and then 2021, 2022. What's the other common theme between those two time frames?
You're talking about World Series for the Braves?
World Series for the
That's
Braves. Whenever that lockout.
shameless on your part.
World Series, baby.
There we go. I mean, hey, yeah, that's even further reason for Anthopoulos to go all in this year. There we go.
The stars are aligning, is what we're saying.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Clip this part of the show and send it to Anthopoulos. I'm telling you.
Oh, he's definitely listening. I promise.
Oh yeah, that's what he's doing.
For sure.
He's not listening.
Right?
No chance.
Robert, cannot thank you enough, sir. There's a reason why we enjoy having you anytime we get the chance. It's absolute great content from you as a great source of hard work as well as insight when it comes to baseball. Please let us know where we can find all your excellent work, both written, podcasts, just everything, because I know Braves country across the board will be tuning in over the next month plus.
Yeah, you can catch me on Twitter @ByRobertMurray. You can catch me on Fansided.com. Follow Territory, do my podcast, The Baseball Insiders. I really appreciate you boys having me on the show here. I'm a huge fan of what you guys do. You're great people, do great work. So anybody who's watching this, give them a 5-star review. Do whatever, because they are incredible at their jobs. Boys, I appreciate you big time. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Robert.
Robert, we can't thank you enough. Please stick with us for just a second after the show. But, of course, you can find Stephen Tolbert at @B_Outliers. Robert, as he said, @ByRobertMurray on Twitter/X. Myself, Shawn Coleman at StatsSAC. And you can find Hammer Territory across all forms of social media, Foul Territory across all forms of social media, Fansided at fansided.com. For Robert Murray, Stephen Tolbert, and myself, Shawn Coleman, we'll talk to you again soon. Go Braves here on the Hammer Territory podcast.
If you made it this far, you will love this next video. Check it out right here, and make sure you've subscribed to Hammer Territory for more Atlanta Braves coverage like this multiple times a week.